Today's program is brought to you by OTCStockShark.com. For the latest and greatest OTC and Pink Sheets information, sign up for your account at OTCStockShark.com. In financial news, stocks bobbed between positive and negative territory on Friday, marking a soft end to a strong October before next week's Federal Reserve meeting and midterm elections. The Dow Jones Industrial Average shed 16 points or 0.1% to 11,098 in recent trading. Chevron and Merck led the downside. Chevron fell 2.9% after the oil majors' third quarter earnings and revenue missed analyst expectations. Merck dropped 2.2% as the company's earnings, excluding items, topped Wall Street estimates, but revenue fell short of forecast. Microsoft was among the Dow's best performers with a 1.7% rise. The software giant's fiscal first quarter profit climbed 51%, benefiting from a continued strong response to the Windows 7 operating system and Office 2010. Microsoft is also the Dow's best performer this month, up 9.1% over the period. The technology-heavy NASDAQ Composite Index rose 0.1% to 2,510. The S&P 500 stock index edged down 0.1% to 1,183. The healthcare sector slumped, but the materials and technology stocks gained. In U.S. news, after a fourth shooting incident Thursday night involving military buildings in Northern Virginia, the FBI appealed to the public for help in locating a possibly disgruntled Marine before something disastrous happens. Authorities announced on Friday that they believe the shooter, who fired on the National Museum of the Marine Corps in Triangle, Virginia, Thursday night, may also be responsible for 3 other shootings targeting government buildings in recent weeks. John Perrin, acting assistant director of the FBI Washington Field Office, said that investigators believe the shooter may be a current or former U.S. Marine with a grievance with the Corps. During a press conference outside FBI offices in downtown Washington, Perrin urged the shooter to contact authorities. Perrin said he believes the shooter has intentionally avoided casualties by shooting at night, and the shootings may be an attempt to relieve frustrations with the Corps. "We do not believe that there is any intention to harm innocent citizens or Marines," Perrin said. Acting out in this way, however, can eventually lead to disastrous and tragic consequences that we all wish to avoid. It may be that he feels he has been wronged by the Corps in his professional and/or personal life, Perrin said. The subject of his grievance does appear to be the institution of the Marine Corps, and not the individual men and women Marines whom he may feel a great deal of respect, admiration, and even loyalty to. This is the second time the museum has been targeted this month. The building was closed when an unknown number of shots were fired at its west side sometime between 9 p.m. Thursday night and 6 a.m. Friday morning Eastern Daylight Time. According to Assistant Chief Mike Crosby of the Prince William County Police, the rounds were fired from Interstate 95. Authorities were still investigating the scene Friday morning. The shooting comes one day after FBI ballistic tests confirmed that one weapon was used to shoot at the museum on October 17th, the Pentagon on October 19th, and an empty Marine Corps recruiting station in Chantilly, Virginia earlier this week. The FBI has not released the type of weapon used. In international news, in Afghanistan, soldiers from the Strike Brigade of the 101st Airborne Division are continuing their month-long sweep for Taliban fighters in an area called the Green Zone. It's a 10-mile stretch of orchards and fields along the Arangdab River, northwest of the city of Kandahar. The unit, headquarters company, is trying to secure Afghan villages and win the support of locals in a territory the Taliban left riddled with roadside bombs and booby-trapped buildings. An hour before dawn on a recent morning, headlights from armored vehicles illuminate the soldiers during roll call at a combat outpost. The outpost is little more than a one-story concrete building surrounded by sandbags and razor wire. Across the gravel parking lot, Afghan soldiers are assembling as well. Army Sergeant First Class Ted Moust is working with a translator to get them ready, but there is confusion about how many Afghans will come along today's mission alongside the 50 Americans. The armored convoy departs the outpost and heads west on one of a few asphalt roads in the country. The Americans call it Route 1. They're headed just a couple of miles down the highway to an abandoned village hidden among the trees between Route 1 and the Arangdab River. It's a place the American troops have never been before. Just a few months ago, this was a no-go zone. It was Taliban territory until units from the 101st Airborne Division swept through the area and pushed the Taliban further west, away from Kandahar.
If you have a structured settlement or annuity and are not sure if you should sell, then this free structured settlement guide from Client First is for you.
Client First showed me how I could customize my settlement my way.
This free guide shows you how to get a lump sum and keep your payments, get immediate cash in 48 hours, and much, much more.
Now I'm able to buy a home and still keep my payments.
Call the number on the screen today for your free Client First settlement guide. Get a lump sum and keep your payment.
In health news, retired Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor and two co-authors, Dr. Stanley Prusner, recipient of the 1997 Nobel Prize in Medicine, and Ken Dwichtwald, a psychologist, published a profound article in the New York Times yesterday. They called for a massive effort to cure Alzheimer's disease. In so writing, they echoed Maria Shriver, who has been making the same argument. It's cheaper as well as more compassionate to cure the disease than to care for it. As the article notes, we don't spend money on polio anymore, not because we streamlined treatment or because we are heartless, but because we eliminated the disease itself. For the last 2 years, indeed for the past 2 decades, Americans have been told that the key issue in health and medicine is national health insurance. The Democrats won a major policy battle in Washington with the enactment of Obamacare, and as part of the result, seemed destined to be hurt at the polls this November. And Republicans seem focused on repealing the law as part of an overall effort to reduce the size of government. But O'Connor's piece reminds us that we need to understand the limits of the fight over Obamacare. The most important roadblock to better medicine is not government insurance or the lack of it. Instead, the biggest roadblocks have more to do with regulations, a capital shortage in the R&D sector, and the influence of the tort bar. It would be a shame if Republicans invested the next 2 years in a successful attempt to repeal Obamacare, only to find that the rising cost of treating problems such as Alzheimer's disease dwarfed whatever budget savings that they achieved. The two issues, health insurance and medical research, are essentially different. They are, to use a voguish business term, different silos. Unfortunately, for the health of all of us, the health insurance silo has come to predominate, at least in Washington, over the medical research silo. To put it bluntly, medical research is more important than health insurance. If our population were still unable to cure ancient killers such as the plague or smallpox or even tuberculosis, it wouldn't matter much if we had insurance. Similarly, if we fail to confront today's threats such as Alzheimer's disease and diabetes, insurance will matter little in the future and might be, well, unaffordable. The key issue of life and death is the delivery of health, not health insurance. In tech news, the Khumbu Valley, which leads up to Mount Everest, now has 3G coverage, according to Nordic telco Ncell. Ncell launched 3G services covering the Khumbu region on Thursday. 3G coverage on top of Mount Everest is a technical possibility, but the main aim is to provide coverage of the tourist walking route up to Everest. A Ncell spokesman told ZDNet UK on Friday. The highest base station is at 5,200 meters, which will provide coverage to the base camp and above, said Thomas Johnson, Ncell Vice President of External Communications. We've built the network to cover areas that are populated and for tourists. Ncell has 10 base stations in the Khumbu area. The company protected the base stations from the weather fairly easily, said Johnson. Due to their small size, the main engineering difficulty had been building the sites as there was no real road. Building the mast was a challenge, said Johnson. Everything had to be carried up there. There is no power supply, so all of the base stations are solar. They're solar powered with a battery backup. There is limited communications backbone in Nepal, so Ncell is using satellite communications to relay signals from the base station, said Johnson. The masts carry HSPA communication services.